Time to plan my interactive read aloud for next week that highlights vocabulary, oral language, and comprehension. Using the core instructional model thinking frame questions under ARK, I am reminded that I need to begin the planning with content objectives that align with my grade level academic standards. Based on the academic standards for reading and language, my content objectives for this lesson will be: readers will listen to a story and discuss one new learning with a partner, and readers will use new vocabulary from the book to create a new sentence with a partner. This tooth book is very appropriate for my students right now since they are all beginning to lose their teeth, and that connection will help them identify new learning and engage with the new vocabulary. Now that I have my objective, I need to think about how can you gauge what students already know related to the content objective. Maybe I could use a T-chart to activate students' relevant knowledge about what they already know about teeth before we read, and to identify what new learning they have after the reading. I see on the thinking frame that part of TIP is to think aloud to model for my students what I want them to be thinking. This is going to be a good opportunity to point out the nonfiction text features in the book we are reading. My students aren't ready to identify these elements on their own, but by thinking aloud about these features, I will be able to model for my students what they are and how they are used. I can also use these features to emphasize some of the key details I want them to focus on as new learning. I might put a small sticky note next to some of these features, such as the table of contents, headings, and captions, to remind myself to think aloud about those elements, as well as how they help me with the key details. I want to be sure to give my students lots of chances to interact with each other to develop their oral language, so I know I need to plan partnering opportunities. I think I need to read through my book and find one or two places to stop and check for student understanding by giving them an opportunity to share with their partner. I need to think about how I will wrap up my lesson. On the thinking frame under ISS, I see how will you determine whether students have met the content objective? Well, I think one way I can determine this will be by asking my students to fill out the What I Learned side of the T-chart. By asking them to share their new understandings, I will know that students have learned new things about teeth. So, when we finish reading the book, I will ask them to do a think, pair, share about their new learning from the book on teeth. I know this will allow all students to answer and will allow me to interact with a wider variety of students as I ask them to help me fill in the other side of the T-chart as we list what we learned. Another one of my objectives is to increase vocabulary. I need to identify Tier 2 words from my read aloud. As I glance back through the text, I see two words that stand out: exciting and occasionally. After choosing my words, I need to think about how to lead my students to interact with these words. I know students gain vocabulary by hearing, speaking, reading, and writing new words, so I will remind my students of the way the words were used in the book, and then create a student-friendly definition. I will then invite the students to use the word in a sentence with their partners. Looking back at my thinking frame reminds me that I need to use data from this lesson to guide future learning. To wrap up our whole group lesson, I will ask students to partner again to tell each other something new they learned about teeth. After they partner, I will call on a few to share with the whole class. I also need to consider ways to extend their learning. I think I will tell them that I will be moving this new anchor chart and the teeth book to the retelling center. When they are in that center later, they can use the book, the anchor chart, and the new vocabulary to retell what they have learned about teeth. Finally, to wrap up, I will ask my students to tell their partner a new word they learned today. I will listen as students talk to each other, listening to see if they use the Tier 2 vocabulary words I chose, or perhaps another word from our read aloud. After they partner, I will call on a few to share with the whole class. Then it will be time to release them to centers. I feel like my lesson will achieve my objectives. Planning this lesson using the guiding questions for the core instructional model has really helped me realize the difference between planning for teaching and planning for learning.